What up friends, Liron here, and today we're gonna paint D-Rock. What up friends, Liron here, thank you for joining me in another video. Today we're gonna paint D-Rock, and this guy, remember I told you I think in a video a while back about Gary Vee, which is who is an entrepreneur and just a businessman, a really talented individual that I've been following for a long time on YouTube as well, and on Instagram and Snapchat. So his camera guy and video editor is this guy, David Rock. And I just have a lot of appreciation for what he does and his work. The way he produces Gary Vaynerchuk's videos has really inspired me in some of the things that I do. And so just as a kind of a thank you, I wanted to paint a portrait of him. Here I have, again, I'll give you a better look at it. I kind of took a picture of him and edited it, cropped it a bit, and played with the number of values, okay, using the posterize feature on GIMP. And this way I get fewer values, and this allows me to more clearly see what it looks like, where the darks are, where the lights are, the midtones and all of that, and it just helps me more easily paint this, okay? So you will see how I'm kind of using this as a guide, but not being too strict in how I follow this, okay? So anyway, I hope you'll enjoy this one. I know a lot of people have been asking for portraits, and I really hope you're one of those and you will benefit from this, okay? I'm really enjoying this series and it really challenges me. Okay, so if you're ready, let's change the angle and get started. Okay, so I got the drawing ready, and I know a lot of you want me to cover the drawing stage. Honestly, this is something I'm working on, and hopefully I will improve enough to do it while recording. I find it a real challenge to do while recording. I just lose my immersion in the process, but I assure you it's gonna come soon, okay? So anyway, what you see here is a drawing that I made. I did basically a preparation of the face according to where the lines of light and shadow go. This is a really good way to get in all of the characteristics of the face without actually having to draw all of the areas, because basically we're going to paint light and shadow, okay? And this is always what's going on when you paint stuff, especially portraits. So now basically the combination I'm using here is the exact same one as my last portrait video. I'm using the Cobalt Azure, the Indian Yellow, and the Perylene Dark Red. But this time, as opposed to the previous portrait where I did use a lot of greens, here I'm going to put the emphasis on oranges and browns and some blues, and so the feeling of it is going to be significantly different than the previous portrait that was very colorful and very full of, I guess, very vivid and saturated. Okay, with this one I want to take a bit of a more serious approach. So what you see here is a mix, and you see it's dominated by the yellow, but there's an added red, but not only red because it's a bit grayed out, so also blue. And you see me varying the mixture here. I just add a little bit more blue to the mixture. So these are probably the only wells you're gonna see me using, aside from when I get to the very darkest darks of his shirt. I will add a bit of indigo just to get it as dark as necessary, because I find it a bit of a challenge to produce hard values with this. By the way, I found a new magical color to make dark values, which is the English Venetian Red. I mix it together with the Cobalt Azure, and it creates intense, amazing shadows. Or even with indigo if you really want to get it dark. Because sometimes in order to get a really dark value you have to use several glazes. So I find that with some colors you can get away with less if you do the mixing thick enough. So now I'm putting in his headphones, and these are significantly darker, and you see I'm letting them mix with the hat, and that's totally fine because they're gonna be even darker than that, okay? This is just the kind of initial layer, and I know it looks super dark now, but you will see it's gonna get much lighter when it dries. For this one I'm using the Cobalt Azure and also the Perylene Dark Red. very thick mixture. You can see that it's almost dry near the edges. You can really see the texture of the paper coming through. The paper I'm using is Saunders Waterford 600 GSM, so it's a heavy paper. It's really good. The size of this is, I believe, A3, so meaning if you take two A4 regular standard papers, you put them one next to another, you get this. So it's pretty large. It's not that small of a painting. And I find that I worked on smaller paper for a long time now, mainly because I felt like I'm still learning and stuff like that, but I found that changing to a heavier paper, a larger paper was really significant. It just makes things a lot easier. You can better see what you're doing. So I find that it is pretty important, and I recommend you try it out. If you feel like you kind of are having a hard time getting the accuracy you want, but the overall result still looks good, then it's probably an issue. It can be an issue with the size of the paper. So anyway, now I mixed again a really thick mixture because there's a heavy shadow under the hat, and I'm putting in that wash knowing that it's going to get much lighter and I'm going to have to probably glaze over it again. I find it's really interesting the way this paper accepts the paint. It leaves sort of gaps in between, and I think you may be able to see them later on when I show you the final result. Notice how careful I am next to the highlight, because the hat is much lighter than this shadow, so I have to be really careful. Now I'm squirting some water on the painting because I don't want the left area to dry out on me, because I'm gonna merge it to the face and the skin tones. Okay. By the way, many of you know I recommend Stan Miller's videos, and he really emphasizes how the color doesn't matter, it's all about the values, and this is a great example. You'll see how you can almost figure out the guy's complexion just by looking at the colors, and it's all over. Trust me, it's going to be like oranges and browns and maybe a bit of pinks and skin tones, but you can still figure out what's going on. So now I'm adding the Perylene dark red, and this will be used for the shadowy area of the face. Okay. I'm still keeping it relatively dark because, again, I know it's gonna dry really light, so I'm keeping it still pretty dark. And also the right side of the face is significantly darker. Later on I'll show you the reference photo again and you'll see what I mean. It's really dark. Anyway, now I'm just kind of trying to vary the wash as I go along, following the line of the lines that I put in earlier, and this can be a challenge. In the beginning I found that I'm varying the wash too much with some of the portraits I've been working on recently, and then I kind of realized that I shouldn't do it as much. So I think maybe for the entire face, maybe 3 or 4 or maximum 5 color variations are enough. Maybe 4. 5 is a little too much. You don't need that much variation. By the way, what I'm doing now is, it may seem complex because there's a lot of lines to follow and things like this, but what I'm actually doing is just being careful around the highlights. I kind of visualize where the highlights are while looking at my reference, and I just paint around those. I don't really care about the other objects right now. I know a lot of people, many experts actually do this really in a patchy way, meaning they vary the value for every area, and I just find it sometimes really hard to do. So I do prefer to have a bit of an even wash, even when I work in kind of patches, like I showed you in Rowlan's portrait. I still keep those patches pretty large. It's really hard for me to vary each and every stroke like I see some people do, which is amazing. Stan Miller also does that. I find that the color just dries really fast, and it's just, it gets to an uneven and annoying result. So my entire focus is just avoid the highlights. That's literally what I'm telling myself. Avoid the highlights. Be careful about the highlights. Preserve the highlights. That's all I care about at this stage. I want to get an even wash, I want to avoid the highlights, and I want to keep it a bit interesting and vary it. So you see here the color, the paint dried a bit. even when I'm doing this in this manner, it dries on me. So imagine what would happen if, like, literally for every brush stroke and a half, I'll try and vary the value. Honestly, I still don't know how people do that. Maybe pre-wetting the paper could help, I guess. Not really soaking it, but just spraying some water on it. These are stuff that I probably should experiment with a little, because now I'm doing a bit of a different application for portraits. So you can see how this starts taking shape. The highlight on the right doesn't matter as much now because all of the left area is still white, and so it's a stronger highlight. So you don't even notice that on the right we have a highlight. But trust me, when we get all the darker darks on the left, these highlights that you're looking at right now are going to really pop. And in addition, I'll probably add a second glaze that will darken things around them, making them pop a little more. Okay. Generally speaking, I found that I have a few things I like to do when it comes to getting that first wash. So what I usually tend to do is start with warmer colors because I'm starting from the top to the bottom. So I'm starting with warmer colors, like yellows and reds, and then I kind of, as I move downwards, I add some more blues and some more greens. I think that's a good way of approaching this in many cases, just because, you know, light usually comes from the top. That's how we're used to it, at least. If you notice, the sun is above us usually. And even when it's not directly above us, it's still in the sky. So and the light like artificial light is on the ceiling, so we're used to seeing light coming from the top, and so our brain is really trained for light to come from the top. So I'm starting with warm, then moving to a little cooler. And another thing I do, and you saw me doing this just this moment, is using a lot of yellow. Okay, by the way, I don't know if the video is flickering or if it's just me right now. I don't know. I'm sorry about that. I just saw it flickering for some odd reason. But anyway, now you can see the reference as well, and you can see the lines I'm following and the highlights I'm avoiding. Okay, on the forehead and on the cheeks. These highlights are going to be really important for showing the expression, the facial expression, like the smile, strong smile. But anyway, back to my point. So I'm generally starting with warm to cool, but also something I find that I like doing is adding a lot of yellows and reds in their purest form to the shadows. And you saw me doing it in the neck. And you'll see me do this again, like adding these strong colors, because it adds a lot of interest to the shadows, especially the yellow. I was really surprised by it, and the yellow just looks fantastic sometimes when you put it inside thick shadows. I find it really interesting. So now I mixed some green, and I used the Indian yellow and the Cobalt Azure, and I think it's a beautiful green. It's the same green you saw me use for Rowlan's eye, on the left eye, or our left eye, his right eye. And now I need to go a little darker, so I added a bit of Cobalt Azure, I believe. A bit of Perylene red, Perylene dark red. And the red will darken the mixture and also dim it a bit. These are the headphones, and again, they're significantly dark. And also I want to get that plastic pattern, and you'll soon see me do that. Here with the stripes that I'm going to put in right now, maybe in just a moment, and it will really give the feeling of folded leather or plastic or something like this. You'll see me do this in just one moment, just putting in the darkest shadows here. Trying to figure out what's going on there. It's a bit complex, and here you see me do that. Like putting in those lines really helps convey the feeling of the material that the headphones are made of. And it's really these small details that you have to pay attention to when you're painting. And I recommend, and someone else recommended this to me as well, a really good watercolor artist here in Israel recommended this. He said, only work as fast as the watercolor dictates. Okay, he said it in Hebrew. So it sounded a bit different, but me translating it to English, basically he said, don't work faster than you have to, meaning only work fast in accordance to the medium, meaning not letting it dry and keeping an even wash, but don't work any faster than that. You want to work slowly, and you want to be able to really read what you see. Many times people look at art like this, and I was one of those people. That's the thing. I remember about a year and a half ago, or a little more than that, I think, when I started in watercolor, I was one of those people. I would look at this kind of portrait and I'll be like, how did the artist do that? Like, how is that even possible? I would look at it and just wonder and be in awe of how this was made. I cannot figure it out. How do they know which color to put where, and how do they know where to darken, where to lighten? And even worse than that, I was wondering, like, how do they know in what order to put the colors, and you know, things like this, because drawing I had experience with, so values and recognizing all of that I knew, but like, how the process, how does that work? And I was trying to paint and nothing good would come out of it. And really, I'm going to talk about this in my podcast, by the way, about how watercolor was a really humbling experience, because I was, you know, I didn't know anything, and it didn't come naturally to me. And unlike sketching, that I have a bit more of a knack for, I guess. Going back in memory lane, I can definitely, and looking at some of my old sketches, I can tell you that it's not like I was a complete natural genius gifted at it. I did have to build up to my skill set, but I did have a natural ability to perceive things very accurately. And if you can perceive it and understand why it looks the way it looks, you generally, all you need is the motor skills to just execute and draw it. But with watercolor, I would look at stuff and I'm like, damn, how do people like do that? I don't know. And yes, looking at this kind of work now, and being able to do that is really inspiring for myself as well. And I hope it inspires you too, because if you're just getting started and you're looking at this and you're wondering, like, how the hell am I going to do that? Then trust me, I was there like only a year and a half ago. And this is exactly why I don't teach watercolor officially yet. I will make courses about it, I promise. And a lot of people have been asking me about it, and I'm really interested in doing it as well. But I just feel like there's a certain level of competency that you need to achieve, and I'm almost like I'm getting there, you know. So if you're looking at this and you're wondering, how am I going to be able to get to this level? And you may not think this, because it still looks kind of weird, because it's in the initial stages. You'll see later on. But anyway, if you're wondering how you can improve and stuff like that, like really, it's just about the dedication and doing it on a regular basis every day, every single day. I think for the first year or so, I literally painted every day, including Saturdays, Fridays. I spent at least an hour a day working on this, and it's just, you know, it's one of the most important things. Blending now, using the one of my Princeton brushes. This is a really synthetic hard brush. I find that it's better to blend with more natural hair, I guess, or synthetic natural hair, and not this kind of plastic brushes. They don't blend as well as I want them to. So I hope this starts to come together for you, and you can understand already the shape of the face, the basic shape. It's only really now just starting to take the shape I want. Notice how when I covered that left area, the highlight on the right immediately popped. I'm going to leave a little highlight on the left area of the neck as well. The way I view the initial washes changed significantly in the last few months. You know, in the beginning, my approach was kind of cover everything up, don't worry too much about it, let it all kind of blend together. And then I went through a bit of a change about a month or 2 months ago, where I was like, try to get it to look as accurate, as close as possible in terms of the values, and then by glazing and adding another layer, you'll get it to look a little more accurate. So now I think I found the happy middle ground, in which I say, try and get it to be as accurate in the values as possible, But don't worry if some of the wash is messed up, or mixes not in the way you expected, or doesn't look so good, or isn't as even, because all of this will be remedied later on. So I'm kind of in the happy middle ground here. I do think the initial wash is important in many different ways, but there's a lot of things you can do. So here you see me just having fun with the shirt. Usually after working on the face, getting to work on the rest of the different areas that are a little less significant, it's really like a vacation. You know, you can lose some of the pressure and tension that you may have had. So I'm just having fun with this. The shirt is, I don't even remember the exact color, but I decided to go with a bit of a yellow orangey. So this is the Indian red and the Perylene, Indian yellow and Perylene dark red. I'm trying to paint around the logo that he has on the shirt, but then later on I just kind of blend it together. You see here, just adding a bit of a bright yellow. I didn't want it to be too stark of a difference. When you get too strong of a contrast, like really strong in the first wash, it's hard to sometimes correct those sharp edges, so I wanted to make sure they're a little blurred. And as I talked to you about my thesis about doing the warm to cool, I'm doing this exactly the same way here. Started with the orange and yellow and red, and now I'm just adding a bit of blue to it to kill it off some of the vibrancy and just make it a little cooler. And I'm really varying it. I'm adding whatever I want, whatever I feel like at the moment. And this is something I really wondered about when when I just got started. How do people choose the colors? And I just now realize colors really don't matter as much. And if you can really embrace that approach, that the color does not matter as much, you will get to a point where you can kind of, in a stress-free way, do try to imitate the color, and you will reach like a very high level of accuracy without even trying as much. Okay, because if you're matching the values so closely to the reference, then the rest is really minor, and even getting the colors to be close to the reference, like just a little closer, can go a long way. Okay, because now you see I'm really going wild with the face. There's like the yellow orange at the top left. There's the red in all of the lower bottom left area. There's the blue and a bit of a hint of green on the right, and it's really just me going crazy. But I could have, in the same way, just stick to pinks and oranges and things that are more resembling of a skin tone, while keeping, of course, the values accurate, and it would have been great, you know. So I could have made it a little more accurate, but I really chose not to, because it's a bit challenging for me still, trying to mix a very accurate color, and frankly I'm not enjoying it as much. So now I am carefully negative painting around the hand. His palm is going to be important just to get the general vibe of the portrait, so I'm trying to be very careful and paint around it. It will be much darker, but for now I just want to keep some highlights on it, so I'm just avoiding it completely. This is one of those things that in the past I would think, wow, how should I approach this? Should I just cover everything up? Should I avoid the hand for now and cover it later on? Should I just do a very light wash together with this one? Can I really just negative paint around it and not do it at all? And all of these thoughts, and you will see how you're just instinctively learning how to do some of these things. Okay, I know the process can be very challenging in the beginning. You think to yourself, well, should I cover everything? Should I go just over part of it? And it's really just a part of the learning curve. Intuitively here, it felt like the right choice to avoid the hand completely and add it later on. Sometimes this is true also for objects that are significantly darker, because you can just go over them in one go with a really dark color and be done with them. But in this example, it's not going to necessarily be just darker. But anyway, yeah. And you see now that that first wash of the shirt dried, and you can see it's not perfect, it's a bit patchy, and I'm not too worried about that, because I know that once I put in that second layer, it's going to have heavy shadows on the shirt, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, just one important note. You saw me really struggling with that wash on the shirt because it's so dry. To get it to be dark, I had to have it a bit dry, which now gives me an idea. Maybe I shouldn't have the first wash dry, and yeah, maybe I should have it a little more wet, compromise on the level of darkness, and just to get a more even wash. But it doesn't even matter, because once you cover it with another one, it just, and you know, it's not really a concern. And so now I'm moving in with the hand, and here I decided to go really crazy. So I started with yellow, then I just moved into pure, almost pure red, and you'll see me just continuing with this kind of trend, using some crazy blues and greens, and I think you're gonna love this one. I don't know why I chose to do that and go really crazy here. On the one hand, you don't want to, pun not intended, on the one hand, you don't want to go too crazy with the hand, because it's not the center of attention. But on the other hand, it's kind of it could be like an interesting second point of interest. You know what I mean? You have the face, which is the main point of interest, and then you have the hand, that's also a point of interest. You have the control. You're the artist. You decide what you want to do. And you have all the power, so you can definitely embrace that. So you see me kind of, I put yellow, like pure yellow, into the blue, and turned a bit green, being very careful around the highlights that I marked for myself, putting in some pure yellow again. Because the yellow is so has such a light value, you can just use it sometimes in its purest form, and it'll still look pretty good. You don't have to water it down always. You just have to take into consideration what the behavior of the paint is going to be like when it's this wet, when it's that wet, when it's this dry, when it's that dry. That's like the only thing that's important. So now I'm kind of blending in, or maybe even just erasing some of the paint there. Using the synthetic brush, you see it did a much better job. I find it just much easier with this, not synthetic, rather, more of a natural hair. I believe this one is, I really don't know. I kind of hope it's not natural hair, just because I don't like the industry. It's kind of cruel. So it may be like a combination, or just synthetic natural, I'm not sure. This is something I should probably research a bit more in the future, because the fur industry and the hair is just the worst. It's really the worst, you know. Whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, or like a meat eater, that's like the worst industry ever. One of them at least. So anyway, yeah, I don't want to make the mood too dark, so I'm gonna light up. I'm gonna keep these things for the podcast, but still try and keep them art related, you know. So yeah, moving on with the palm, just getting covering it all with paint. With the second wash, it's going to be a little clearer what the actual shape of the fingers is, so don't worry about that. I used some pure blue there, some pure red. You see, I'm just going crazy. This is really fun, by the way. This is really, really fun. Yesterday, I actually sat down and wrote for myself the topics for episodes 4 and 5 of the podcast. So what happens is, I read that it's best to launch the podcast with multiple episodes, meaning you publish all the first 4 or 5 or even 10 episodes, and only then you spread the word that it's out. And what happens is you just get more downloads, and it can lead to better ranking. So I actually I already have the entire 5 episodes planned out, fleshed out, the entire table of contents, and I'm just ready to record them. All I'm doing is waiting for the microphone. I ordered a really nice microphone from Amazon. I'm just waiting for it to arrive, and then I'm gonna start recording the podcast, and I'll update you. It's going to be really fun. Like, imagine what I'm doing right now, and you know, I'm talking, and if you want, you can look at the painting process, but I know some people just enjoy listening to the person talking, so thank you for that. I really appreciate it, and I can't take it for granted. So I know many people just enjoy listening to my voice, and it's a really, really cool thing. And with the podcast, you won't feel obligated at all to look at something. You can just listen to me talk about different art-related topics, different rants, talking about how to become more productive as an artist. I don't want the podcast to turn into a how-to. I do too much of that already in my courses. I want the podcast to be something really fun, and just you know, just kind of a storm of ideas and concepts just to talk about in a more abstract conversational sense. But I do want to talk about these topics that are very relevant to us as artists, that are kind of in the white space and are not being discussed enough. Like the business of art and things like this. I think it's really interesting for people that are trying to build a business around their art, and it can be so many things. I learned that there are, sorry, I just stretched, so it may have affected my voice. So yeah, just a lot of things that I think are really interesting, because building a business as an artist is hard. There's a lot of challenges there, and every industry says it. You know, building a social media agency is hard. Building a business around insurance is hard. Everything is hard. You know, everything has its own hardships, I think. What's interesting about businesses around art is that usually people that are artists aren't necessarily as gifted in business and sales and things like this that are really important for business. So this is something that I want to touch upon and kind of maybe connect the two worlds. Not that I'm necessarily an expert in both, but I do think I have some valuable experience in that field. So as I told you earlier, this will require further glazing. The super dark color I put earlier is definitely not dark enough. You can see this on the headphones, especially on the right side, that is supposed to be significantly darker. I wouldn't get too stressed on it. A lot of the times it just requires a lot of layers. So you see now I put just pure red in there. And this really, sorry, I had a weird hiccup. So this weird red really helps to create interest in the shadows. What I found I'm doing usually is just the first wash I'm kind of going a bit crazy, using a lot of colors that aren't necessarily there. And on the second wash, because I don't want to overburden it with a lot of weird kind of colors, I usually stick to what I found, at least in the latest kind of portraits I've been working on. I kind of stick to red and blue. I drop the yellow usually, and I just stick to, you see me doing this right now, I'm shading using red and blue. Sometimes I'll add a fourth color, like I told you, the English Venetian red. I'm so happy that I found use for it, really, because I was so excited to test it out. When Schminke gave it to me with all the rest of the pens, I was really honored to have it, and I believe it came with the pens, yeah. So I was, or maybe with the tubes, I'm not sure. No, it came with the pens. So I was really honored, and I just thought, wow, it could be really cool to find a use for each and every one of them. And some of these paints, like the neutral tint that I published an episode of the paint show on, some of these I don't have necessarily that strong of a use for. In the English Venetian red, I was so looking forward to it. By the way, what I'm doing now is just coloring around the highlight, okay, because I told you I want to bring more of it out, and you can see my messy hair. So this is what I mentioned earlier, making it lighter by darkening the area around it. So anyway, back to the Venetian red, I was so excited to test it out, and when I tested it out, I didn't like it as much. It felt really like a dead red to me. Like a dead red-brown, but now I found a use for it. It's super great for darkening things up. It's kind of a similar story with the Indigo, because the Indigo, I didn't have a good use for it, honestly. I thought I would, and you know, I thought I'll shade with it a lot, and I couldn't find a good use for it. But then really I found something for it, which is the very darkest darks on the last maybe layer. Sorry, I'm stuttering a bit. I don't know what my problem is. It's pretty early in the morning, so it's 8 a.m. I'm waking up really early every day, so I woke up at 5:30 today. I have this routine I'm doing every morning, and then now I'm getting to narrating this video. So I'm putting in darker darks here under the chin. There's a bit of like a stubble you call it, I think, the beard, like really short kind of patchy stubbles of beard that I wanted to indicate already. Notice how I still haven't almost touched the left side in terms of shadows, okay? Because there are some heavy shadows next to the eye and under the nose. I still didn't get to that. Okay, so we're really building it up. I think this is probably turning out to be one of my longest videos ever, by the way. It's gonna be an hour and maybe a few minutes. So, yeah, so hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy listening to this. So now I'm just adding, yeah, to the neck. You know, again, it looked really dark when I first placed it, and now it looks much lighter. It dried much lighter. I decided here to shade it with some yellow, actually, or maybe it's just no, it's just a kind of a green glaze. And because of the transparency of watercolor, for example, I had the first wash, it was yellow. Now I'm covering it with blue and red. So what happens is you can still see the yellow coming through. Okay, and this yellow coming through here is what makes it so interesting. Okay, now because of the transparency, this is why I don't want to go too crazy in the second wash, because if I go crazy in the first wash and then I go crazy in the second wash, then it can make the whole thing way too crazy. There is a sharp shadow right down there. It's the collarbone, I think, or I don't know, the neck thing. So I added it in. Now you can see again the reference. Look at the headphones on the left. There's a shadow on the eye that I'm trying to get here. Really trying to work this in stages. What happens with this portrait, I'll already give you a sneak peek. I kind of messed up with some of it with the work order, and let me explain to you why. Basically, you want to start with the lightest lights, add a bit of darker, a bit darker, a bit darker, until you build it up, okay? Sometimes you can put in the strong darks in the beginning in some areas, and it's going to be fun. It's not that terrible. By the way, I'm super careful here. This is an important area, okay? But in any case, what happened here is that I added the lightest values, then the darkest, but then darker, but then I just put in too dark of values. So what I found is that I kind of skipped a stage, and then I ended up adding a mid value in between. Okay, you will notice this later on. I think that the color selection here works really well, by the way. This red, I think it looks great on the kind of more well-lit area. I think it's really cool to light it up with this kind of color. So now I prepared a mixture of some blue, a little bit darker, and I want to try and start getting the indication of the shadows around the nose and the cheeks. This shadow is really important, and the highlight on the right is really important, because this is what's going to build a smile. And he has I got a comment on Instagram saying that I really captured his kind smile. And I have to say that's a really, really good catch, because he does have that kind of a smile, and I really tried getting that expression. It was a bit of a challenge with the area of the lips as well. There's a lot of uniqueness to that area, specifically to this person, to David, and so it was a bit of a challenge. I had to really work hard on getting the lips to look the way I wanted them to. So yeah, so this is one thing that was a real struggle with this one. The previous portrait, Rowlan, just came really naturally to me. I did actually another portrait of the current Israeli Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu. I know a lot of people don't like him, but it has nothing. It's not like a political statement or something like this. I just did it because I just admire a lot of people for their achievements, you know, and for the things they did, and also not necessarily admire them, but I think they have an interesting face. And in this case, I just thought he had a very interesting. Got to be super careful here, by the way. So in this case, I just thought he had a very interesting face that I really wanted to capture, and I got like one comment of someone saying that after seeing this, they have to unfollow me. Whatever, you know, if you're that closed off to just seeing art, then, you know. But in any case, not trying to be too negative, I did a portrait of him, and I really want to gift it to him. So I sent him a message on his Facebook page, and still didn't get a reply. I'm gonna just keep on doing it again and again and again, like an idiot, until they answer. I sent like 2 messages, I think, already, and I'm just gonna do like two messages a week until I get a reply back, you know. So this is just to give you a window into my world and my beliefs. I think that you really have to sometimes try something a lot, like many times, to get it to work. And if you're quitting after just once or twice, honestly, you're not going to get anywhere. In many cases, because especially if you're doing things independently, you really have to try. If you're not using a built-in system, like if you work for a company, then maybe some things can come more easily because there's a system, and not always, granted, but when you're doing things like this independently, and I just decided I'm gonna paint him, and he didn't ask for it, and then maybe he has like, I don't know, maybe he has 5 paintings of himself already. I doubt he has one like the one I did anyway. But if you give up after one try, then you're doomed to fail. So I'm just gonna keep messaging, and I'm gonna keep you updated on it. By the way, if you're interested, I'm gonna let you know, because hopefully I'll be able to gift it to him personally, and maybe even take a picture. So it could be cool. I hope for the best. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. So anyway, now I'm getting finally the darkest darks on the right. Now here's where I made my mistake. Like I mentioned earlier, there's kind of a mid value in between what you see on the entire right side of the face and what I'm putting in right now. Okay, it's a bit too dark. I think this one's already a bit too dark, and I kind of need to get something in the middle. Okay, you see me hesitating also because it's just a very complex area, and I can barely see the pencil here. This is something I forgot about completely until I saw it now. I completely lost the pencil lines, and I actually had to pause the video, strengthen them, although I could do it without pausing the video, just going over them with a pencil, and or maybe I didn't even do that, I don't know, and just I couldn't see anything, you know. So here I added them. You can see it now. Yeah, I did. I took a break and just added them in because I couldn't see anything, and it was also kind of a guess because I already drew them in their accurate position, and now I had to kind of redraw them. It was a bit of a challenge, but anyway, yeah. Now I'm putting in the darks. It's a bit challenging still because I don't see everything, and I was kind of afraid that I got it to be less accurate the second shot. But yeah, this is just some of the challenges of watercolor. For next time, I'll learn to just draw using the pencil a little with stronger lines. I could go a little darker with the drawing here. I could have used even a stronger pencil or softer lid just to get a darker value, I think. By the way, I thought about it just now, but there's a certain rhythm to watercolor that I really notice now with the way I'm working. So in the beginning, in the very first stages, you can kind of work a little faster, and you also need to work a little faster because the color dries and you have to really paint larger areas. But with the later stages like this one, you kind of have to slow down deliberately, like really, and be very careful with what you're doing. And I think it's a good concept for, I just wrote it down for myself, like as a podcast idea, to try and talk about the rhythm, like when to work faster, when to work slower. And with this example, you see me really slowing down and being very careful with the details. The eyes and the nose and the mouth are also important. I find actually that the eyes and the mouth are the most important. The nose also, but not as much for recognizing the face. I think also, so this is what I mentioned earlier. I think the right eye, the eye to our right, which is actually his left eye, you see it's too big of a difference. It looks like a dark spot in the middle of a very kind of light area. So this is where I'll have to add some mid values, okay? The lips again were a very challenging part here, and I'm just trying to figure out where to put those pitch black values. Usually exactly where the lips connect, you'll have a very dark value, depending on the lighting conditions, but usually you'll have just a thin stripe of very dark value, and also close to the edges of the lips. This line needs a bit more strengthening. I felt I regretted blurring it or blending it earlier. I think it looked a little better just not blurred. But in any case, yeah. So now I'm putting in the darkest in the darks on the left, where I actually did a good job of creating, I think, sort of a middle value in between them. There's sirens and stuff. It's just, I hope the background isn't too noisy in these videos, because just where I'm recording right now is just in the middle of the city, and there's a lot of noise here. And I hope I don't wake up the neighbors, by the way. I think all of them wake up early, so that's fine. But anyway, now I'm the things that are going to be the most important here are the really above the kind of eyelids and the I always forget that part, like the part above the eyelid. I'm gonna, or maybe I don't know if that has a special name. Sorry, I just had a blackout there. The pupils and the iris and the eyelids. I guess this is what I was looking for. It took me some time. So now I mixed this super dark mixture. Okay, this one basically has Cobalt Azure, the Perylene dark red, and some Indigo, I believe, already in it. Okay, I'm using the flat brush now just because it's a larger area and I want to cover it more easily, and later on I'll switch to a rounder brush. But this one, again, it just needs to be so much darker, and it kind of frustrated me because I add more and more and more layers and it doesn't get to the level of darkness that I was looking for some reason. So that frustrated me a bit, and I just decided to create a super dark value, and just being careful not to tip the board on which the paper is on. I got this board in my local art store, Arta. I got a few of these, a smaller one and this one. I still don't have a board that's large enough for the huge A2 or even A0 paintings. So I'm literally taping it directly to my table. I did that with the Prime Minister painting. And it worked out really nicely. I also did it with the large abstract work that I didn't record, but those of you who follow me on Instagram, check it out there. By the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, check it out. It's really cool. If you're on Instagram, you have to follow me. It's like, it's a command, you have to. And if you're not, then I recommend you check it out. I think it's a really fun place to be in, and look at a lot of artwork. Sometimes you just want to look at finished artworks and not necessarily videos. So I think it's a really good place. There's so many good watercolor artists on Instagram. It's just amazing. A lot of Russian watercolor artists. Turns out watercolor is really popular in Russia. And I didn't know for the longest time. I couldn't figure it out. Why that happens, and then I met some Russian people here, and they told me that they actually teach it in schools in many places in Russia, and so it just kind of is an interesting explanation for why so many, especially female watercolor artists, I see so many, and they're just really good. They always have this super complex wet in wet technique. They get like half the drawing done wet in wet and then just add the shadows kind of dry, and it just looks fantastic. So this is something, again, experimentation. The learning curve on watercolor is insane, and I think that if you really devote yourself to it, like I hope or I want to believe I'm doing, you find out so many different facets of it, and just really, it's just fascinating. I don't know, I think when I'll start painting with acrylics and with oils, I'll be more objective and I can judge, because I always talk about this, but I never, I can't really make a comparison. But I want to get to a point where I can and really report to you if that's really the case, and or then when I'm into oils, I'll be like, yeah, it's a whole other world, and the oils is really really versatile as well, or not, I don't know. But anyway, my plan here with this watch is to do the top part, get it to be a little darker, but then blend it into the bottom part, which I thought at the time was dark enough. I'm not sure that plan worked out. I don't remember exactly how it panned out, but we'll soon see. But you definitely see that the top part needs a little more darkening. As I told you, the eye just floated there in empty space. And it felt way too detached because it was so dark. Also, the shadow on the nose was necessary in any case, because there's a strong shadow there that sort of connects to the nostril, to his left nostril, which is to our right. So I wanted to get that in. It was really important. And I'm actually connecting this shadow now to the lip. And you see, really trying to read what's going on, really step by step. I'm constantly stopping, looking at the reference, going back to the painting, looking back at the reference. Sometimes I'll find myself not looking at the reference for a few moments, and it's usually when I get a bad result when that happens, and I don't notice it sometimes, and I just start to to lose my connection to the reference, and I'm just painting, and then I stop myself and I ask myself, Liron, like, where do you get the information you're painting right now? I mean, you're not looking. And then I remember to look at it. I look at it and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to fix some stuff. So that happens sometimes. I don't know where I get this cockiness to just, stop looking at it and imagine like I know what's going on in there. But yeah, it's a constant struggle sometimes. Another thing I would say, like, how do I know I did a good job with the portrait? Because I'm super tired afterwards. The constant act of looking up and down, and looking up and down, and trying to figure out what you're looking at, and then looking at the painting and trying to figure out how you're going to turn it into what you're looking at. It requires such a strong focus. I cannot explain this to. If you're painting, you know what I mean. If you paint with watercolor or with anything, I think with watercolor it's even worse because the paint dries and then you have to really be quick about it, And with oil, maybe you can take some more time. I know with acrylics too, you have to be quick sometimes, depending on how you paint. But with watercolor, it's really, really significant. You have to be so quick, and the way I know I did a good job is if in the end of the portrait I'm like exhausted. I can barely, I don't have enough stamina for more than one of these large portraits a day or at a time. Maybe I'll need to take a break of like a few hours, but yeah, it really takes a lot of effort. This one took about 4 hours, I think. The total painting time is much less than that. As you can see, I didn't cut almost anything, just some of the mixing, but I didn't speed up anything as well this time. It's just the natural pace, and you can see the video is like an hour long, but the actual painting process took a lot more than this because I spent so much time mixing, and there's the drawing stage also that took maybe 40 minutes or something like this, or 30 minutes, and it's just such an exhausting process sometimes. And they say that when you do something that you really enjoy, you can just keep doing it like the entire day. And it is true. I can do it quite a lot, but it's still tiring. It's still exhausting, and it's a good type of exhaustion. Like you feel like you gave it your best. So I hope you can relate to what I just said. On the left there was a patch of white that shouldn't have been there, so I just covered it up with some of the Venetian red, and I think it will blend in nicely. What happens is that when the value is similar, two different colors can blend in a nice way because we see them the same, kind of. I don't remember if I softened the edge there on the left, but I probably don't. So now the face is almost done, believe it or not. I think just a few touches of shadow on the left, just a bit more, the beard, the stubble, and all of that will really add to the effect. And also the lips. The lips require a bit more work. I tried not to get them to be overworked. I'll tell you exactly what I need to do here. I remember now what I did when I worked on this. So do you see the lower part of the lip? On the left, there is a strong highlight. It's white. And then if you go a little down, you will see that there's a large highlight on the chin. These two highlights are now too connected to one another. And what I'll do in another wash is try and separate them a little more. So I'll add a bit of darkness in between them, and hopefully that'll create a separation, because this is what I felt like was missing here, the separation between these two. And once I did achieve that separation, it really helped to bring out the shape of the lips that I told you was the hardest part of this painting. Yeah, I just wanted to share because I remember just now the thing that I needed to do. So yeah, now I'm trying to get a better shape on the shadow on the nose. Because it still wasn't clicking exactly the way I wanted. The nose and the mouth here were the main challenge. It's funny, the eyes were much easier than expected. Usually I have a harder time with the eyes. One of the areas I find especially challenging is where the eyes kind of meet the eyebrows. So anywhere between those two, getting that distance accurately is also a big challenge. But with this one, it kind of was easy, I guess. And get this, like, look at the eye on the left. It has such a great sense of light, as opposed to the right. The one on the right is kind of in the shadow, and then on the left you can almost see the eye, the lights are reflected on the iris, which is a beautiful effect, I think. Now, to balance this out, I've been adding so much darkness to the face. The next stage would be to just get the last indications of all the facial features, but then to work on the shirt and the hand. These will really balance things out, okay? So now the eyebrow needed a little darkening in to be congruent with the rest of the darker areas, because I kind of skipped it. What happened was I originally used a blue, kind of almost dark enough blue for the eyebrow. Then I went way too dark with the eye, so the eyebrow was a little too light at this stage. Now I noticed that there's this shadow coming out of the eye that I just kind of didn't indicate at all. And now I'm trying to get that to be there. And sometimes you can just edit and add that shadow and then blend it in, and it will look good. A lot of the times you don't have to cover everything up and connect it to another wash. You can kind of do what I'm doing right now. You blend it in, and I'll also blend it in near the cheek, and then it will feel good. I think I really pushed this painting to the limit in terms of the glazes. I think if I had to do another glaze, it would be too, like, a little overworked. But I wrapped it up on time, I think. I didn't go too overboard with this. So now I'm mixing, I believe, a color for the eye. I think it needs to be a little darker, and this was kind of a bet. I wasn't sure how it's going to turn out. Just the areas around the iris, and also inside it, because I felt like there was a sense of light, but a bit too much. I just said a sense of light, but the contrast, at least in real life, looked a little too strong for me between the outline of the iris and the eyelid and the iris itself. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of tried to balance it out. And on the left, also, this highlight that I left is a little weird. I'm not sure exactly what I ended up doing with it. I think I added a bit of a darker value there to the entire area. Or maybe not, I don't remember. This is all of the portraits. I did like 4 portraits in the span of 3 days or 4 days, and so some of the components really mixed for me. Yeah, so I used a lot of different colors. I also started working on a portrait for my sister. I will post, when I'm done with it, I'll post it on Instagram. I said I'll finish with it tomorrow, back when I did the first post, but I forgot that it will take much longer, so I still am working on it. But for this one, for that one, I used a bit of a different color scheme. I believe I used some different colors for that. So it'll be a bit of an interesting result. I used, I believe for the red, I used maybe a bit of magenta, and I just dropped the Perylene dark red. I think so, I hope so, because I'll have to continue it, and I hope I'll remember exactly what I used. I just started it and then took a few days break, a break of a few days, because I had to work on other stuff. Anyway, now I'm getting in those mid values for the headphones. It shouldn't be as light as it was. And really the hardest part of this painting is done. The face is in place, everything, all of the facial features are relatively clear, just adding some small shadows here and there. Even if I would leave it at that, it should be fine, though I felt like it may need a bit more touching on. Because his face were a bit of a challenge. I wasn't sure about the resemblance. Okay, with all the rest of the portraits, I saw the resemblance to the person, and with this one, I had to keep looking at it, looking back at it, looking at the reference, taking a few steps back physically from the painting. Sometimes you'll get that, you know. In the past, I was at a point where I could do portraits, and they would turn out really looking great, just not like the person I was drawing back at the time. So this was something that frustrated me, and getting the similarity sometimes it really just happens, and sometimes you need to work at it, and it's really complex. And it really also depends on the face of the person. Some people have faces that were meant for portrait drawing, really. So that's pretty interesting. Now I'm finally getting to some of the shadows on the fingers. And these will really bring them out. Right now they look super weird, like worms or something. I don't know what these look like to you, but now that you'll see me, by adding the indication, you'll see me giving them a much better definition, I guess. The last few days have been really challenging. This portrait. Now I'm recording the narration, but I finished this portrait maybe a week ago, and by the time you're going to see this, it's going to be a few days after the narration. But so these days, it's now It's now Tuesday, 7th of October. Today and yesterday were very challenging for me. I mean, yesterday mostly, not today because today just started, but yesterday was very challenging for me. I have no idea what I just did. I think I tried to imagine the highlight. But in any case, yesterday was a really challenging day, and I get one of those days once in a while where I feel like all the things I'm doing of pushing forward and working really hard don't amount to as much as I would want. I think this is just me expecting too much. Like in terms of everything, like the growth of this channel, or the growth of my Instagram following, or the sales of stuff. And I'm really, it improves over time, and the trajectory looks great. But I have this thing where I think I'm impatient at times, and I really want things to move faster than they do. And I don't know, maybe it makes me think maybe I'm not doing everything right, or maybe there are things I can do to make the growth faster. And it's sometimes really frustrating. And yesterday there was a buildup of all of these emotions, and I just felt highly frustrated, and like things aren't going the way I want them to. But then I let it go, and usually the day after I have all of this emotional storm, the day after feels great because it's like a release, So today I feel much better, but I do have these days where I'm really unsure of what I'm doing, and I think it will be really cool when I get to where I want to be, to talk about these times, because when you see people that reach their like amazing success, it's so easy to just see the part of them that achieved the success, and it's easy to forget that once upon a time, maybe not even too long ago, they weren't as successful, and they were just grinding and hustling and working hard and just trying to build something for themselves and for their environment. And it's really easy to forget that when you're in that, in the hard work mode. But the one thing I can say is that even if I have responsibility and there are things I could do better, which I'm sure there are, I'm still proud of myself because I am pushing myself really hard. And doing a lot of things. A lot of people tell me, you have to take a break, or you're pushing yourself too hard. And I don't feel that, I don't feel like I have to take a break or something for the most part. Sometimes I do on a macro level. I work too hard for a week and then I have to rest a bit. But generally speaking, I feel like I am demanding exactly what I need to demand of myself. And probably I could even demand a little more. So yeah, but it's still, there's this thought of what if I don't make it to where I want to be, and what if all of this hard work will amount to just mediocre success, and it's a big mental challenge. So yeah, that's me making this video very lighthearted and encouraging to watch. But anyway, I had to share this with you, especially if you're watching this far into the video. Then I know you're the kind of person I can share these stuff with, so I just wanted to share this. And sometimes I have days that are wonderful. I really enjoy what I'm doing. Everything is clicking. Everything is working out perfectly, and I really force myself every day to thank the world or the universe or whatever there is out there for what I do have, for the success I do have, because it's so subjective. Many people will look at the things I did so far and will say I'm super successful. You know, publishing a book and a few books, a lot of books, and doing these kind of things independently and selling them and like making courses and teaching and you know, it's all in the perspective, and you have to remember that. You have to remember to be thankful for what you do have, because when you focus on that, usually you tend to think in a way that will attract more of that. So anyway, yeah, this is just a small note. I wanted really to share this with you. And I didn't even talk about what I'm doing. So basically I switched to a larger brush. This is one of the first brushes I ever purchased, by the way, and I barely used it since I got it. But now it was a good time to use it because it's such a large painting and it's a large brush. So it's a flat brush, and I use a flat brush here also because I want to cover large areas, but also look at the left, the entire section while I was talking about what I've been going through and stuff like that. I didn't talk about it. And also what I'm doing right now, these stripes of creases and folds are really easy to produce using this kind of brush, which is exactly why I decided to use it for this part of the painting. So now moving on with some more mixing action. And a lot of this painting process is just mixing. The part here I find again is a bit challenging is really I mixed the mixture and it felt a bit darker than all the area on the left. And then sometimes I'm not sure if I should blend it in with the rest or kind of just let it be. And in this example, it worked out really nicely because the right side has to be darker in any case. So it worked out well, and some of it is still wet, as you can see next to the color. And so it just blended in nicely, kind of did its own job without me trying too hard. So anyway, yeah, now I'm just kind of, again, negative shaping really carefully around the hand. And there are, again, related to what I said earlier, there are multiple ways to approach the process. So you could connect the first wash of the shirt to the hand. You didn't have to negative paint around it. You could just connect them and just let it be. And then later on, when you add the darker shadows, it would have been fine. And then you'd get a less patchy wash. I think it really comes down to your preference of the result, and I think the best thing you can do is actually try both ways, experiment with both or any other way you have in mind, and see what works for you in terms of the final result. Sometimes you'll find that there's not a lot of difference, and so you may just decide to take the easier route. You know, if something is really similar, just you can do the thing that's a little easier to do, and it looks exactly the same. So I find that in many cases, in many instances that's the case. You can just decide on what you want, you know. Many times I personally forget that. I get caught up in questions of how should I do this or that, and then I'm like, wait, this is one of the things that I have to decide how to do, and then I just embrace the independence, and that's it, you know. So anyway, once we're done with this darker wash on the shirt, we basically have just maybe a few touches on the face, but mostly the hand is where I think I need to add a bit of a darker values. Though I'm not sure. I think I could also leave it the way it is right now. And the head also requires just a bit of yellow on there. I didn't want to leave it white. Originally, I wondered if I should add a background or not. If I would have added a background, I would have probably left the head white and then paint around it. But I decided not to add a background, so I kind of just put some yellow on the head. A really thin glaze. You want to be careful when you go over, and when you glaze in general, you want to be a little careful not to lift the previous layer, because that can happen from time to time. So we have to just pay attention to that. And this one's really close to finish. Here's the final result. I hope you enjoyed the process, and let's wrap up. Okay, so friends, this is done. I just wanted to give you a better look of the painting. I already kind of put it in a casing just to protect it a bit. So I'm really pleased with the result. I think there's a lot of originality. and just the use of colors and the way I apply them. I really love that this area is sort of burning orange, and there is a contrast here with this nice mix of blue and yellow and red. Let me show you once again. I used this as help just so that I can clearly see all the variations and the values, and I kind of followed it, not exactly the same, but I did use it as a good guide to help me understand how to draw this. I do want to zoom in a bit just so you can get a better view. Sorry about that. Just so you can get a better view of the details. So let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so here's the face again. His head was originally very white, and I considered just applying a wash to the background. I ended up leaving it white though, because I don't know, I was kind of scared that it's not the right thing to do, and it looks good like that, so I kind of decided to keep it that way. Here's some of the shadows and the creases and folds of the shirt. I like to sign lately like this, kind of to the side of what I'm painting. I really like the different colors I used for the face. There's a lot of yellow here under the head, which I think on the neck I think was a really good decision. Here I went a little dimmer, a little more bluish. I think there's a lot of indigo here as well, so I used the 3 primaries but also a bit of indigo. And finally the hand here, which is where I kind of went wild. I just put in the clear Cobalt Azure inside and had just the red, and it doesn't matter as long as the value is somewhat accurate. When you squint your eyes you can still see it properly. Here in the fingers as well, just decided to be really original with it. There's one thing that I really like here that was unintentional. You can see there's a lot of lost and found edges. So here we have a very clear edge, and then it kind of blurs out. Then it blurs out again, so I really like this. I think I did a good job with that as well. I hope you enjoyed this entire process, and let's change the angle and wrap up this video. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, the final result, protected in the casing. I hope to send this one soon. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new from it about my approach to doing this, to drawing portraits. Still something that really challenges me, and I find that I need to kind of use a lot of crutches to do it. Meaning, and it's not really crutches, even the best artists do it, that they really draw where the shadows go and where the highlights are, and you know, sometimes you gotta help yourself, and you can't just assume that you'll know exactly where the lights are, where the darks are, and that you'll just be able to do it without some guidance. Okay, so this is what I try to do here for myself, to really guide myself and know where the darks are, where the lights are, and then I can sort of use those when I work around it with the brush, okay, if that makes any sense. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in a comment below what you think and what you want to see maybe more of. Don't forget to follow me, to subscribe here on YouTube, follow me on Snapchat and Instagram for more works in progress, daily updates, personal stuff, views for my CD, and I will see you again in another video really soon.